Hi, I'm Jeremy Ruston, and welcome to the 108th TiddlyWiki Hangout. And I'm joined this week by Dave Gifford. Dave, hi, how are you doing? And tell us a bit about yourself and where you are.
Hi there. My name is Dave Gifford. I am a missionary here in Mexico City, Mexico. I'm originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan, United States, and I teach here at a seminary, and I produce materials in Spanish, primarily using TiddlyWiki and putting them online for free on the internet. So yeah, I've been using TiddlyWiki since about 2006 now, and love it, and it continues to be a daily part of my life.
That's great, Dave. Yes, indeed, you're one of the people that's taken the journey with me from TiddlyWiki Classic through to TiddlyWiki 5. And it's been fun watching you get to grips with TiddlyWiki 5 over the years. And in fact, you made one of the big early contributions to the TiddlyWiki 5 documentation. When do you remember a few years ago, you introduced a whole bunch of introductory material. So yes, an elder statesman of the TiddlyWiki community. So there was one thing I think that kind of particularly we were discussing that particularly prompted inviting you on the call to try and get you to demo. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Let me share my screen. Make sure I get this screen one. Yep. Okay, good. So yeah, this is, I've been involved with TiddlyWiki for a long time. This is the first tutorial I ever did for TiddlyWiki Classic, called TiddlyWiki for the Rest of Us. It just came about because when I jumped onto TiddlyWiki, I saw how exciting it was and how useful it would be. But it was such a learning curve for me since I didn't have any coding background or anything like that. And so I thought, well, you know, other people might not want to go through the learning curve I went through. So I came up with this tutorial, and it had a lot of different sections to it. And that got really popular. That at the time, that was just had thousands and thousands of hits, and that was pretty amazing. I think it got people into TiddlyWiki that maybe wouldn't have done so otherwise. So that was the whole goal of it.
It's a great example of TiddlyWiki Classic as well, isn't it?
And I did things like Tiddly Vault, which was kind of a precursor to my tool map now. It was for TiddlyWiki Classic, different plugins and macros and things like that. And then had a showcase of TiddlyWikis in the wild called TiddlyWiki in Action. So it was fun working on stuff. And then we changed over to TiddlyWiki 5. And so then this is the tool map that I did a couple of years ago now already. And I've done it on Dynalist just because Dynalist as an outliner is just very quick to write and organize and rearrange points and that kind of thing. And so it made more sense to do it in there because it was a lot of information I had to input. And so yeah, it's it says it's over 600 entries, but I haven't updated that in a long time. It's probably more like 700 or 800 now. But it's got the tool map has all kinds of different categories. And then you can go to, you know, checklists, so it takes you to the checklist plugins. And you go back, and calendars and dates has a lot of different things. So people have found this really helpful. And I've got a couple people who have been catching things on the Google forum and adding them too. So I've got 2 other people that are administrators of that, and they've been catching a lot of stuff that I miss and adding that, so that's wonderful.
And, it is. Sorry, I was going to say it's one of the first kind of collaborative authoring projects that we've had in the community.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been involved in TiddlyWiki in a lot of ways. And like you mentioned, I did some of the documentation for TiddlyWiki 5 and just briefly in 2014. And so yeah, what people are probably most interested in at this point is something that came up this year. Early this year, I think January, I discovered Roam Research, or just called Roam. And it's a great tool. It's an outliner like Dynalist, but it has the feature, well, it has a number of features, but the main one being bidirectional linking. And so that when you make a link in OneNote, it creates a page for that link, and when you click on that link and go to that page, it also it shows the information from the original page as transclusion. And I thought about that, and you know what, TiddlyWiki already has that. It's just a matter of kind of imitating that in TiddlyWiki, you know, and people are going really nuts about Roam, and that's great. It deserves all the excitement. But I thought, you know, a lot of that excitement is for things that TiddlyWiki has had for years. And so I thought, you know, I really should try to do something to bring out that feature of TiddlyWiki that's been kind of there all along, but kind of hidden in submenus and that. And so I basically created TiddlyBlink, which was the first version before Stroll. This was kind of the experimental version. And basically, you create a tiddler, and you put a link. Well, I can just and I have autocomplete there too, which is also something that Roam does. I tried to do a bunch of things. So then you create the page, and you can see down below references, new tiddler. You can go back and forth between the two. And where that's helpful for, like in my case, is I read a lot of books, and when I take a note on a topic in a book, I want to be able to link back and forth between the book and the topic very easily, you know, rather than create this hierarchy of topics where you have to push things over there. I'd rather just have it happen automatically. And so this bidirectional linking makes that possible really quickly. And another thing that you can do is in TiddlyBlink and Stroll that you can't do in Roam is pick how you want to view those references. So let me go back to just create it. You can see it as a link here, but you can also do it as search results in context, which is probably the most similar to Roam, but the one that I use the least. And then simple transclusion, you can see this slightly darker gray box here, and it just has the text field of the tiddler. And then you've got collapsible transclusion, where you've just got the link to the tiddler, and then you've got a way to open or close it and see it if you want. So it gives users a variety of ways that they can view the transcluded references. And what else to show you? Well, I had go ahead.
Well, this may not be the most, but I'd love you to show us the plugins that are being used.
Oh, sure.
Through what they're all for.
Sure. So of course, I've got a bunch of, you know, different things that I need, view templates and so forth, and toolbars. But yeah, I use the macros, the list search. That one I use a lot. It's a really nice plugin for listing and filtering titles of tiddlers. And down in the plugins, I've got the context plugins. That's for the viewing the
search results snippet context.
Viewing viewing it as search. What happened here? Clicked on the wrong one, I guess. Oh, yeah. Okay. So yeah, it lets you see it that way. And then, what was I going to say? Oh, this, well, yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. The Flibbles did a relink plugin. And so if that's the nice thing, I really like that plugin, because if I change this to another tiddler, it relinks it. So when I go back to Jeremy Rustin, another tiddler is there, and it transcludes it. So it updates the tiddler everywhere, not just in the title of the tiddler field. So, and the full screen editor is not compatible anymore. So I took that out of Stroll. And then the context, I really like that. That's basically autocomplete. And that's really, you know, nice. I can type in Jeremy, and it gives me options, you know, of the tiddlers that are available. And then you just hit enter and it's there. So that's really handy.
Yeah.
And that's about it for TiddlyBlink. But then Stroll is the new version. And basically what happened was I created TiddlyBlink just as an experiment to see how, if I could get the bidirectional linking to work. And I did, but then I kind of wanted some of the other features in Rome. I had taken a course by Matt Eliasson. I'm not sure how to, or Eliasson, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. We had a course for Rome, and that really brought out the importance of the sidebar in Rome. And I thought, you know, I could replicate that and even do it one better in TiddlyWiki by having two story rivers next to each other. But I got stuck on it, and SAC came and created this stories plugin, which is the other plugin in Stroll here. And so any link that I have, that's an external link. Let me find one that's got an internal link. Oh, sure. Then when I want, there we go. Come on here. Okay, so yeah, welcome to Stroll. Trying to find a tab that has a, okay, here we go. So you can just shift click that and it opens up a second story river, and I can hide the sidebar so I've got lots of room to play around with it. And you can open as many different things as you want. I can add this too. Let's see, shift click that. And then you can divert tiddlers from one story column to the other. So now this one has two different tiddlers in it, and this one just has the original one. And there are a lot of ways to view those things. So you can, for example, the open tab, then SAC has it so that it shows what's in the left column and what's in the right column. And so that's pretty handy. You can hide the right column, or you can show it. And like I said, you can divert back and forth. You can also, I have the fold buttons, which have always been part of TiddlyWiki, but I have those, you know, more visible, more accessible. That way, when you've got a lot of different things open in the second column, you can get at them much more quickly. And so yeah, that's basically it. You can create a new here, which instead of tagging it, I've kind of avoided tagging with Stroll.
Yes.
And instead of tagging it, it adds a link to it instead. And so then,
I see,
and when
yeah.
you go to two columns, then you can see, you know, new tiddler is linked there.
Could you show us the control panel plugin page listing?
Sure.
Just again, it's interesting to see what you've used.
Edit relink, edit context and stories and context plugin.
Excellent. So it isn't one thing. So I love the fact that Rome exists because it's sort of exploring slightly different spaces than TiddlyWiki. And the key one that you've already mentioned is that it uses links as a form of tags. So a link from a tiddler to another tiddler counts as tagging the first tiddler with the second tiddler, which is a fascinating way of looking at things. And as you've proved, it can be done in TiddlyWiki pretty precisely. So it does, that does make me wonder if the two approaches are in some sense the same, because they can be, one can be converted into the other.
The one thing that Rome does better than Stroll is that the transclusion is granular. It's line by line. And so that's something that I tried to replicate, and I kind of came up with a way to do that. And so I had a version of TiddlyBlink called Idea Stew, but I've got a demo of something I've been playing around with it just in the last week or so. And basically, let's say I'm going to create use the ampersand button, create a new source. Like, this would be a book or magazine or web page. So I'm just going to put interview with Jeremy, and then I can create a note. I've got the buttons down at the bottom. I just thought that would be kind of nice. That was kind of inspired by Sachs, the streams plugin. But basically, I'm going to put some text, and and you notice when I created this, it's got interview with Jeremy already linked, but under an ampersand thing so that it hides a little bit. And then what I can do here is just add the topic quickly. So, topic, random. And so then when I save it, I've got some text and I've got very, inconspicuous links here. And then when if I go to the interview of Jeremy, it's transcluded like it is in Stroll. But I've got, bless you, I've got the preview plugin shows, that this is interview with Jeremy, that's the source. And then the hashtag is for the topic. And then the N in the middle is just for the node itself if I need to edit it for some reason. So so it puts the focus on the text rather than on all the links, That's one thing I wanted to just kind of hide a little bit. So like I took notes on this book the other day, and these are all individual notes that I took on the book. And I don't know, it just reads nicely. I just got the little things at the end, but the focus is on the text itself. And it looks good when you do the print preview, hiding the colors. And yeah, I don't know, I just like it. So it's more of a granular approach like Rome, where you've got the focus on these just little lines of text that are transcluded. So if I go to, this covenant theology one, all those notes are in there too, the ones that are linked to that one.
I must make a post about the dynannotate plugin, which is very poorly named. But I think it does a perhaps slightly more flexible version of what the context plugin does, and allows you to extract a small number of characters around a match that is highlighted in yellow. But Dave, I wanted to ask you whether your reflections now, you've kind of you've already been through a cycle with Rome of trying it out, liking its features, and now come back to TiddlyWiki to apply those features to TiddlyWiki, replicate those features, I should say. I wanted to ask whether you were still using Rome, whether it fits into your current way of working.
I like a lot of things in Rome, but I don't know, I just decided not to use Rome. I've already kind of invested in DynaList and TiddlyWiki, and just to add one more thing to the mix. But also, I found there were certain things like printing and Firefox, which is the browser I use the most, and just some of the styles, although now they have some user styles and so forth. But I don't know, I just found certain things about it kind of distracting. And so I like what I've done with TiddlyWiki. In a sense, what I did with TiddlyWiki is try to come up with something a little better and a little bit more to my tastes than what I was doing with Rome. And so I'm getting what I would get out of Rome, I'm getting in my versions of TiddlyWiki. And so I don't feel any burning need to use Rome. And now they're charging for it. The free, the free phase is gone. And I think that's interesting because you're seeing like Stroll and TiddlyWiki in general is getting a lot of attention all of a sudden because Rome is no longer free. The excitement's there, but so people are looking for free alternatives, and TiddlyWiki is one of them that people are really excited about. The other thing that's nice too about TiddlyWiki is that it's open source, and it's not tied to a subscription service where they have the rights and access over your information, your data, and that. And so there's privacy concerns. I'm not too terribly concerned, about that aspect, but I know there's a lot of people who are. And I like Rome a lot, and I think it's just starting. They've got a huge roadmap of things that they'd like to do with it. So maybe eventually I might jump on board the Rome cult, as they call it. But I'm quite content between DynaList and TiddlyWiki for what I need. I mentioned DynaList a lot, but that's mainly because it really frees me up to do writing very quickly. And that's what's exciting about Sachs Streams plugin, because it's kind of replicates that to some extent. I don't know, testing it out, how since each line is a separate tiddler, I don't know how that's going to slow things down, if you add a lot to it. I have no idea. But
it should be fine. Should be fine.
Should be fine?
I think so. I've done a lot of work with tiddlers, with wikis with ridiculous numbers of tiddlers, tens, many tens of thousands of tiddlers. And amazingly, even things like search is okay. And admittedly, a computer made in the last 5 years, but still. Dave, the other thing I think you said earlier about something about not being a developer, but one of the things that's really thrilling for me about Stroll is the way that you were able to use work of other people and integrate it together, and indeed collaborate with those people to get the features you wanted. But I wondered then if you could give us a taste for the kind of things you had to do to integrate all of those pieces together.
Sure.
And it's partly a trick question, because I suspect what you're going to show us is that you are a developer, albeit in a different environment than we're used to.
I had one of the people who really promoted TiddlyBlink, the earlier version of Stroll, was Anne Laura, who you interviewed in the first Google Hangout. And she, I told her, well, I'm not a developer, I'm not a coder. And she's like, yeah, but you are, And I don't know, I still would beg to differ. I don't think of myself as a developer. I think of myself as an enveloper. I take these little bits and pieces that other people who can write code can do, And if I see that if it's fairly transparent, then I can either tweak it or combine it with something else. And so even though I can't write the stuff, I can at least, interpret some of it and kind of wiggle it a little bit and come up with new combinations. So
If that's wonderful. Can I
that's
just check?
fine.
You said I'm not a developer. I'm an enveloper. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I love it.
Thanks.
The stuff I can see on the right with your
Yeah,
typical organized way, it suggests that it's only the Tiddler's starting GIF mechs that you created to, as the glue to put this together. Is that roughly right?
yeah. I've got like new buttons for new
Yeah.
journals and new Tiddler.
Okay.
I had to do some edit. The edit template was an important piece, and I don't think I had it working in TiddlyBlink correctly, but in
Right.
Stroll I do. Uh, I noticed that when I was playing with it a second ago. Basically, what I did was I hacked the edit template so that when you close the edit template, it creates the tiddlers that are linked, that are missing and are linked in the current tiddler.
Yeah.
That was just to replicate Roam, because Roam automatically creates pages when you create a link. And so I said, well, I'd like it to be able to do that, just because Roam does that. I use that a lot, but I know some users have said they don't like that, and I show them how they can just get rid of this tiddler and make their life easier. Yeah, and then the sidebar, the sidebar for choosing which way to view the references. I've got another sidebar of I've got something that, let me hide this. You can either view the Tiddler titles on the actual first line, or you can view it underneath. And that was in a way because all these buttons take up so much room that the longer titles get wrapped over, and I don't know, I find that a little unappealing. So I just wanted a way to have the title straight across. And you can choose, how to, if you want the left column to view one tiddler or multiple tiddlers, same thing for the right column. So yeah, I've got, sidebar tiddlers for that. Of course, style sheet for Stroll, I've got that. I have a lot of my own style sheet stuff. I've got so many style sheet things that I don't have in here. I tried to keep Stroll as minimal and as close to regular TiddlyWiki as I could. There were a few users, I don't know, there was one rather aggressive user on the Google forum was like, you're putting all this extra stuff in TiddlyBlink and Stroll, and I want it to be, just out of the box as close to, it should be just one plugin and you just do it, And so I tried to keep it as style-wise and so forth and functioning as similar to a regular TiddlyWiki as I could. But in things that I do, I've got a lot more stuff that I do in terms of style. And yeah, of course, the different view templates, these are basically view templates, and then you alternate between them. So, this checkbox here just basically changes the view template.
Would you like to pick out one part of it that was particularly challenging for you to work on?
Oh boy.
Or something that's particularly complicated, I guess. It's again, it's fascinating that what you've shown us is that's such a small list of whatever it is, 20 tiddlers or something. But I imagine some of them are quite complicated. You've got a lot of dynamic switching things in and out.
Yeah, it was hard to figure out how best to do the switching of the view template. I can open that up. Let me see. I think it's sidebar.
Well, we can kind of see that you've put those in different tiddlers, which is that's a classic TiddlyWiki piece of organization, I guess. Yes, okay.
Yeah, it's basically, that's all it is right there, but I got a little help on this part here. Um, Anything that's got, a macro on it, that's somebody's helped me out with that. But anyway, but yeah, basically it's just a list filter of, the ones that are tagged GIFMX refs. And, and then it just adds it to the view template and hides the other ones. So yeah, so that, I don't know, that was a kind of a tough one. Here's
Well,
my
there that's interesting. You said I got some help with this part here, and that is and I think what you're referring to is posting a question on the Google Groups, and within normally quite quickly somebody pops up with an answer. I wanted to try and ask you what that feels like. As somebody who doesn't think you're a developer doing these things that the rest of us think are fairly complicated and demanding. Does it feel different knowing that you've got that network of support behind you? I guess maybe you could compare it to other occasions when you've learned stuff where you don't have that support network.
Oh yeah, I mean, Stroll and all these projects have always been very collaborative in that, I couldn't do it without the help of the TiddlyWiki community. And that's one of the beautiful things about TiddlyWiki is the community of very patient, very kind people. And in Stroll, I've got a whole tab listing all the people who were involved in TiddlyBlink and Stroll, because really was a collaborative effort. Great people. I'm still amazed at the patience of people, the people on the forum. For years I've been coming in, hey, how do you do this? I don't understand this. And, within a day, sometimes within an hour, I get an answer. It's just amazing. And very rare are the times where I put something up there and nobody responds. Once in a while it happens, but usually, there's somebody who will help me out. But I think those people know that when I ask a question, it's usually because I'm trying to do something that I'll share publicly and freely. And that helps a lot, and there's a lot of them who do the same thing. And it's just amazing what we can do together. Mm-hmm.
And I can see we're looking at some dogs here.
This is my dog Muffin. Yeah, I did that just basically as one of the. Stroll has a large tutorial. Let me just.
Yes, you've gone to a lot of trouble with the presentation to make it easy for other people to use.
Yeah, I really wanted. I knew that Stroll would be helpful, and so I really wanted to do this really long, starting just even with the TiddlyWiki layout. Start from scratch and just work through it so people could see just what it does. I knew that they needed kind of an introduction to TiddlyWiki, but then also an introduction to the things that Stroll adds on to TiddlyWiki. And so I worked really hard on the tutorial to make it just dead simple. And of course it wasn't the first time, but people were jumping on. There's this wave of people, thanks to Ann Laura, who really promoted things. And so I got a lot of feedback on the Google forums of hey, I don't understand this, or this link didn't work, or whatever. And that helped me refine that quite a bit. So yeah, it's been a good experience. It's funny because I've had so many frustrations with TiddlyWiki as well as joys. I mean, it's been this good learning experience. I think most people who use TiddlyWiki end up spending more time tinkering with it than actually using it. But usually they enjoy it too, and I have too. But like, for example, one of my issues was always, before Stroll and Rome and all these things, was that I can stop sharing my screen, I guess. One of the struggles that I had was, let me minimize that, was that on the one hand, TiddlyWiki kind of has a deductive approach, like a top-down approach, if you think of it in terms of linking, because like the top, the default tiddler, then you put links, and that's almost like a table of contents, and then that tunnels you down to the more specific things. And if you go that approach with links, it's more deductive, more top-down. But if you tag, you're starting from the specific and you're tagging it with something more general, and that's more of an inductive approach. But then tagging and linking would never actually, they would kind of pass by each other like ships in the night, And so that was always one thing that kind of frustrated me, and I've always been trying to figure out what's the best way to think through that, And then there was the kind of the, well, do I use multiple files, one for each project or topic, or just one big massive central file? And, what does that mean for searching? What does it mean for, how filtering things out and that kind of thing? And then one of the frustration I mentioned earlier about cross-referencing, between one topic and another, or a topic and a book I'm reading, and things like that. And what Rome hinted at and what I was able to do with TiddlyBlink and Stroll helped me work through most of those things. It doesn't have to be deductive or inductive. It can be both or neither. Just simply link things together as you wish. And but also in terms of you don't need to do two different processes between taking a note in a source and seeing that note under a topic. Does that make sense? And so yeah, and I've been playing around with Node.js finally.
Yes.
I played around with it when it first, when you first started putting that out in TiddlyWiki, and I don't know, I just didn't see at that time how that might help me. But now I've been putting out a couple websites in Spanish using Node.js and publishing the tiddlers as static HTMLs and putting them out there. And I'm finding that enjoyable, and so it's been kind of fun. I've got a thing, let me see if oh yeah, I do have it. I can share my screen again. Where's the share screen? I'm using a monitor and my laptop screen.
Oh, yes.
But I've got so many things open that I can't, let me see, where's, yeah, screen one again. So I've got, this is actually on Node.js right now. You can see the 127. Yes. So basically, I've got this project where I'm taking passages, and this is all in Spanish, passages in the Gospels. Yeah. And I'm, basically what I'm doing is for each passage, I'm creating like the parallel passages in the other three Gospels, if there are any. And I'm using the details HTML, not a plugin, just the HTML details. The references to the Old Testament that are in the Gospels, and the themes, and then some of the literary elements like people and that kind of thing. So I can go to click on Moises, which is Moses, and that'll show me the passages that link to that have Moses in them. I haven't, I'm building this up. This is a long-term project, but very long-term project. But yeah, so basically just using the linking to connect things very quickly. And because this is something that, people who read the Gospels, they'd like to see kind of some of these, some of these links, in what passages does this theme appear or whatever. So that I have this on the home page. I've got a long list of different, like a list of theological themes in the Gospels, or list of the literary elements. And I got a long list of them.
And do I understand publishing this as a static site?
Yeah, this is a static site. Yep.
So can you show us the the static site on the internet that corresponds with?
I think again. Let me see. Ah, yes.
Yes, right. I suppose you need to remember URLs live. That's pretty.
Yeah. So yeah, this is the site. It's giffmex.org, HTML Evangelios, and so yeah, I can go to, I don't know, literary genres. It doesn't have much. Then you just click back, literary elements, so that I can, well, okay, where are the, let's say, I don't know, passion predictions in the Gospels. And I just started working on that in Matthew. I don't have a very long list. There's a lot more of them, but this is a long-term project, but it's a growing thing. So each of those lists will grow, and they'll grow automatically as I create links in the passages to them. And so it's really great for building this up. And
is it important for the people, for your audience, that it's a static site that's easy to load on a poor network? So.
Yeah, I mean, here in Mexico and in other parts of Latin America, there are areas where internet is very slow, or they have to use their phones. If they have even cell phone networks are inaccessible in some parts of Mexico. And so, if they don't have to download this big, huge TiddlyWiki file that I've, added everything onto, I do have things like that on there, but this project I wanted to do as something that, and it's nice too, because I don't have interesting, I don't have the link button. I usually have a link button here so that you can just copy to your clipboard and paste a link somewhere in social media or whatever, in case you find something you really like. And I think I can show you that in another thing I did.
Well, Dave, in fact, we should draw to a close, I'm afraid. The problem we always have with every Hangout is that there's far too much to see, and I'm sure that everybody will again be wishing that we could carry on. But Dave, I want to thank you very much for coming along and preparing. It was really great to see your stuff, and how fantastic that your story runs through whatever it is, 15 years or something. And Stroll is a very fitting way to mark an exciting beginning to 2020 for you with the Node.js as well. So thank you, Dave. It's great to see you today. So let's wave goodbye to the audience, and then I'll pause the recording.
All right, and thank you, Jeremy. Thank you for TiddlyWiki, and thank you for the interview. And it's really great to see that you're back up on your feet again and healthy, and wish the Lord's blessing on you.
Dave, thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Cheers.